Hey there, beautiful people. This is Mark Siegel, your resident EdTech specialist, here with a whole series of videos I'm putting together about Google Forms. So whether you are brand new to Google Forms or you're a more intermediate or advanced user, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks in this whole playlist of videos to kind of get you going for this school year. Hopefully give you something new that you can take to your classroom immediately. So I want to show you just a little bit about what Google Forms can do. And then, like I said, in this first video, I'm going to walk you through the most basic pieces. So Google Forms can be used for basically any type of material, anytime you are collecting information, whether it be something like this where a teacher evaluation form like I use here, which has drop-down menus, gridded questions that students can give a strongly disagree or to a strongly agree situation, open-ended questions, multiple choice. You can insert videos. There's all sorts of things you're going to do. So like I said, regardless of where you are starting, this first video is going to be for beginners. So I'm going to walk you through really from the very get-go, how do you make a Google form? And then by the end, you'll be experts, and I'll be showing you how to use evaluations and add-ons and a whole bunch of stuff. So please check out the whole playlist and then decide for where you want to, jump in wherever you feel you're most comfortable with at that point. Okay, so let's get started. So for my beginners out there, let's kick it off with basic Google Forms. So you're going to go to your Google Drive, you're going to click New, you're going to come to More, and Google Forms will be right there. So notice that the default is Doc, Sheets, and Slides. You have to go to More to do a Google Form. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is, and this applies to any Google document type thing you're making, whether it be sheets or slides or forms or whatever, give it a title. Okay, so we're going to do, start it off with beginning of the year assessment. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it's going to be like, I'll give you a hint, a suggestion that whatever you call it, make it something that you're going to remember. Okay, so make it a common thing. So for example, in my class, if I give a test, the first thing I label everything with test in the beginning. This way, all my tests end up alphabetically together whenever you're going to do this, or quiz, etc. So homework assignment starts with homework, and this way all your homework files end up in the exact same order because they start with homework and then they're alphabetized from there. Okay, so a couple of things about Google Forms is it always tries to predict what it thinks you want. So when you give it the title, you can put in a description here. So if you want to give more instructions to your students or your parents, whoever you're collecting information from, this is where you would include that piece here into this form description. Notice that multiple choice is the most commonly used question, so it's the first question that pops up. So I'm going to include which class of Mr. Siegel's are you in? Okay, so in this case, it doesn't know what I want, so I'm going to say, which class of Mr. Siegel's are you in? Option 1, I'm going to go with block 1A, and then I want to add another question, so I'm just going to hit enter, and I'm going to type block 1B. Okay, so those are my two choices for the multiple choice. Notice it does have an other option. For example, let's say I forgot a class. So I'm going through and I just wasn't thinking. I can add other. This would leave a blank space for the students to type in their own answer if they choose this. Okay, so this is just a straight up standard multiple choice question. Okay, now you'll notice on the bottom there is a required button. If you want to make sure that the students have to answer a question before they submit, keep this on. If this is something that's optional and you don't care about it, but you're just collecting information, turn this off, and then the students can submit the quiz without having answered that question. Okay, that's super important for if you're doing a formative assessment. So you want to make sure they answer every question. They can't skip a question. Make sure that's turned on. I also want to point out that in the bottom, there's these three buttons. We're going to be talking about these options later because these will change depending on what type of question you add. Okay, let's add another question. So now I come up here to this menu bar that's on the right-hand side, and at the top, I have add a question. So default is multiple choice, but I have a variety of answers. So let's go through real quick what we're looking for. Short answer is something real short, like one sentence kind of thing. Something that's less than one sentence, a couple of words, whatever it happens to be. Paragraph would be something longer than a sentence, obviously. So if you want them to write out a whole description of something, you're going to use paragraph. Checkboxes allow for multiple answers, so you can use a multiple choice style response and click all that apply. That's a great one for there. Or a drop down. Notice that in the multiple choice, I'm going to click a drop down right now, and I'm going to type the same question I had before. Which class of Mr. Siegel's are you in? And I'm going to do the same options. Block 1A, and then my other option is block 2B. I'm sorry, 1B. Okay. These questions appear differently. I'm going to jump to another screen real fast just so you can see them, how they look differently. So here's what a multiple choice looks like. Here's where a drop down happens. So what's the benefit of one question versus the other? Multiple choices are great if you have just a few choices, like an A, B, C, D, E kind of situation. Drop downs are if you have a large number of choices and you don't want it to scroll all the way down the screen. So if you are doing something that related to, let's say, the entire school and you had every teacher's name in there, you might want to choose the drop down so that all those stay condensed, and then once they click the drop down option, you can see all of the options and then choose the one you want. It keeps the form shorter in the long run. Okay? Now let's talk about the rest of these options. So, multiple choice. We'll skip file upload for a second. Let's talk about linear scale. Linear scale would be like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable were you with the lesson today? And then the students can choose, they drag a little bar across to which one they want. Multiple choice grid was similar to what I showed you in the beginning, like on a teacher evaluation form. So it looks like this. So you have to indicate what the top measurements are and then what the statements are that go down the side. So your columns are labeled like strongly agree to strongly disagree, and then your options are along the side as you do it. Checkbox grid is something similar, but it allows for multiple options per line. So if you wanted them, it wouldn't just be like a strongly agree or strongly disagree. It would allow for multiple choices in each section. And then obviously, if you want them to insert a date, they can type in it, like this is a pre-formatted date format, this is a pre-formatted time format. So they could type it in. These also have pre-formatted pieces, and I want to show you what happens with date. Because date is, like what is your birthday? Okay, so they have to enter a month, a day, and the year. Now, I want to show you those. Remember I said those 3 dots are important. So notice that it says description. So I could add a description of what I want them to look for. So for example, I hear, please make sure to use the format like month / day / year for. So that this way it's required. So notice that it says include year. So they have to include the year in whatever it is. So now when they go to do this one, it actually gives them a calendar, and they could type it in, or they can choose, the year, the month, etc. They can go backwards in time. So it gives them a little bit of options when you do that. It's also great if you're scheduling like parent conferences. This is a great one to do for this. Okay, so that's the basics for adding questions. Basic all the way through. So you have to kind of decide for yourself which question choice is best for you in that moment. Okay, so that covers the basics of questions. Let's talk about what happens if I put them in the wrong order. Okay, so you'll notice that when I have my mouse over certain boxes, I get these little 6 dots that appear. That allows me to move questions around. So if I don't like the order that I have a question in, I can click and drag them to different sections. Great if you are typing out questions and you accidentally put them in the wrong order. Okay, let's talk about these other options. Some of these other things, you can import questions from other Google quizzes that you have. You can add titles. So for example, if you wanted to add a different section title, so I'm going to drag this up and say, important information. Okay, this is not a question. This is now just a title. So if I jump to what the quiz looks like, you'll see there's just a separate section now, and then there's a different set of questions that go down below that go along with it. I can add images, I can add videos, and then I can add a section, okay? I'm going to show you how to add a section in a later video. I'm going to jump into a couple of these in a later video. For right now, again, we're just talking about the basics of Google Forms. These will be coming into like parts 2, 3, and 4 later, okay? Now, so now you know how to actually create the form. Let's talk about making the form pretty and how it gets sent out. So let's go to our settings tool. So we're going to come up to the gear up here first. Okay, when you set this up, this is going to matter about whether or not you are on your personal account or a school account. Now, different schools will have different setups. So mine is set up so that only people in my district who have a my district's email address can answer this form. Meaning that if you send this to a parent, they're going to get blocked, and you're going to get an email that says this person has requested access to this form. So be prepared to that. So if you unclick this, anyone who has the link can answer this question, answer these questions you put in the Google form. If you wanted to collect email addresses, you can do that. This is great when you're working with students because then you don't need one that says name. I very much dislike it at the very top if you're sending it to your school that it says enter your name. If you do collect email addresses, it'll automatically pull all the email addresses for you into your spreadsheet because all of your data goes into your spreadsheet. So it's sorted alphabetically for you by, I'm sorry, it's put into timestamp like how it's entered, but you can then sort it by last name. So it makes it super simple. This option here for response receipts is for the student. So when if you turn this on, when they hit submit, they will receive an email back automatically with all of their information. Now, if you're doing a quiz, you don't want to use this one because it'll send them back their responses. So you don't do that if you're grading a quiz. For quizzes also, you can limit it to one response or you can have them enter it as many times as you want. Understand that if a student actually hits submit too early on a quiz, there is a way to undo this. You just have to delete it from the spreadsheet, but that's for a later video. Obviously, and then respondents can edit after submit. So if they hit submit and they realize they messed something up, they can, before it'll give them an option of, are you sure you want to submit? No, I want to go back and edit my responses. Okay, then they can go back and edit their responses. And then very rarely do you ever want them to see what their summary of the responses are. So that would be for like more of a survey situation as opposed to an assessment situation. Okay, let's talk about presentation. So this section is great for something that's very long or for quizzes and tests. 1, shuffle question order. Okay, so if you want the kids to have randomized questions in like random orders on your test so that no two kids are getting the same results, you want to choose shuffle question order. So just make sure that none of your questions are things like information-based questions like what is your name, what is your block, etc., etc. Those will also get shuffled in there, and it makes it really obvious that you shuffled the questions. How do you shuffle the responses? I will get back to that one in a minute. Show a progress bar is for one of our later videos. I will come back to that. If you would like a special message to pop up in the confirmation message, you can type that here. When the students hit submit and it says it'll come up with your response has been recorded. If you want to change that, you can say, thank you very much. This will be graded soon. And then this will appear in their message. FYI, you can also put a link into this, which is clickable for the students to go to another assignment. Again, something for later. And then quizzes we will get to in a later video. I'm going to do an entire video just about how to make a quiz out of a Google form. Okay, let's hit save on that. Now, if you want to see what your form looks like, you'll notice the eyeball up here. Anytime you click preview, this will be what your form looks like. Now, you have to close out of this window every time you go back because otherwise it doesn't update any changes you make. So let's talk about making it pretty. Okay, that's under this little paint canvas piece here. You can choose an image as a header that goes along the top. So I'm going to choose an image real fast. You can choose from their options. Actually, you can choose from their options or upload your own. So I'm going to just pick some random one. Chicks and eggs look great. That now appears along the top. You'll also notice that the color palette has changed as well, and you can make small modifications to that. So I like this green. and I like my background to be just a little bit darker. Beautiful. You can change the fonts. There's not a lot of fonts, and it just, as you can see, changes all the questions, not the responses, as you go through. Okay. There's also a list of add-ons that you can add on to Google Forms, but we're not going to talk about that in this Google form. So you have now set up your Google form. Boom. Okay. You are done setting up your Google form. How do you send it out? Simple. There's actually a couple ways. If you are using Google Classroom, all you have to do is click on your assignments or your announcements and click Google Drive, and your Google form will automatically appear, and it will automatically go as the form layout, like laid out as if you are previewing it. Okay, so your students will see it exactly like this. If you want to send this to people, you can embed this in an email and send it this way. Okay, you can write in your email, and you can even click this box here that says include form in the email. That means that people do not have to click a link in order to go to an extra window. They can answer the form directly inside of the email. This is great if you're sending it to staff members who don't like to click stuff. They just like to tap, tap, tap. You can also get the link. Here's the link to the Google form. You can shorten the link so it's not as long and bulky. That you can copy and paste into an email, or obviously you can also embed it. So if you're making a website and you want to embed this, you can embed this in your website. Here's my only information I want to share with you, and this will be the last thing I do in this video, is Google Forms are always meant to be narrow. They're really designed for more tablet purposes, for viewing purposes. So if you view this on a tablet or a cell phone, you're less likely to have to scroll left and right. So your computer will always give you these green bars or these spaces on the sides of your video, of your Google form. So just keep in mind that as you're doing questions, be careful about how far you have to scroll, because this, as whatever you have to scroll in the preview, this is what people are going to see. Okay, so that is pretty much everything you need to do the most basic pieces of Google Forms. What I'm going to show you in the next video is how to add sections so that not all your questions end up all on the same form, on the same page, and it breaks it up, the monotony of your Google form. Thank you very much for watching. Jump into part 2 of this series next so you can get a little bit more information on Google Forms.